So I want to know who's the worst drummer you ever interviewed. I want that on tape.
The worst drummer?
Yeah.
The worst drummer always is me.
No, that's a lie. I know you had it worse. Hello, everybody. My name is Iggor Cavalera. I'm a drummer, percussionist from Brazil. And today we're here in Cologne, Germany. And we're gonna talk some old school drumming.
Our first encounter was the Re-Roots Tour,
Yeah.
2018, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Now you're on tour with your brother again and you have a fantastic re-recording in your pocket. Honestly, I really love it.
Cool.
Not just saying it because we are sitting here. I think it catches the rawness and the spirit. And that's always something, most re-recordings, I'm like, maybe don't do it because it ruins something.
It's tough.
That's exactly what it's about. It sounds almost like your former selves would sound like with a time machine.
I think from my reading, why it worked, it was because the state of mind that me and Max wanted to re-record this. It was to capture something that we always had, but due to how difficult it is in Brazil at the time to find an engineer, a studio, everything, we always felt that it didn't do justice to what we did. So as far as like playing, I tried to stay very, very minimalistic, close to my brain was at that time. I didn't try anything fancy, anything crazy to change too much. But I was really into revamping a bit of the sound so you could hear every note of the drums and things like that, where they got a little lost in the original recordings.
Back then, there wasn't the technology that we have now. So it was technology restrictions in recording.
Yeah.
A-track or track recording.
It was like all done in one take, some mistakes are still there, which I'm totally fine. I can live with that, no problem. But the actual sound, it's what bugged me because I remember us performing those songs at the time and we sounded much better than what the recording translated. And that's the only reason me and Max wanted to do this. It was to give a little justice to those records.
But at the same time, I just assumed that you were trying to be in the mindset of, like you said, like you were back then. Not too much experience with your drum set, no experience at all with recording, but still this youthful ferocity.
Exactly.
And trying to get yourself into that mindset of being like the ferocious teenager, like with...
Yeah, it was. It took a lot of Red Bull, a lot of coffee to get in that mindset because I was 15, 14 and 15. Bastille Devastation, 14. Morbid Visions, 15. So that's a very young drummer and a very passionate and energetic drummer. So to go back to that brainwave, it took a lot of energy, But I also had a really good time because that's one of those things. Those records for me, I love them. And I was never ashamed of what we did. So it wasn't something that I have to redo this. It was sonically what we wanted to do. It wasn't the idea. It wasn't the attitude. That was already there. I just tried to play with the same attitude that I would sit on the drums when I was at that age,
I would say that could be a trap because there are other bands who try to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, has been a lot of re-recordings and to be also fair, there's also a lot of reunions,
right,
who also don't do justice. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it has to do with your heart. If your heart is not 100% on it, if the main focus again is making some more money, that people can see that. I've been to shows, I'm not gonna name it, but I've been to shows of reunions that I was like, I don't feel it. But I also been to certain reunions, and that I can name it. You know, someone like Black Flag, which is a band that I love. The guys are almost 70, 60, 70 years old and killing on stage with so much passion. And, and that for me, that was like a fine example of how a reunion, a re-recording should be. It was all about the passion,
I was really afraid before clicking on the song. Please don't mess this up. And I was smiling.
Nice.
I wanted to be in the mosh pit right that very moment because I was like, yeah, I'm feeling it. It sounds the way it should be, not sounding wise. So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, you have a better sound now, but if that is lost in translation or if you're not the same person anymore, then don't try to be it if you can't be it.
It's hard, yeah. It's hard. And of course, that was something that me and Max, we were worried. But we put our mind in the right state. That was the thing when we were recording, when we were revisiting the stuff, listening back, and we were like, oh yeah, it needs to be like this. It needs to have this vibe here. But once we got comfortable with the material, and then we did minor changes, like at the end of a few songs, we added a few bars of drumming, which is something that doesn't really change drastically, but it does add a new flavor to it, but nothing crazy. It's not like a remix.
Playing some songs for so many years, your approach must have changed over time. So what are the best examples for that?
Well, that's the thing. Some of the songs, and I must say this show that we're doing tonight here in Cologne, 80% of the songs we never really played. We played very few times in Brazil at the time that they were released, and we never really toured. Of course, there's songs like Troops of Doom, stuff like Antichrist or Necromancer, that here and there, they appear in our set list. But the majority of this set, it's all deep cuts. It's all stuff that even people who are completely fanatics of what me and Max do from Europe, they never seen that since we first step here in 89. We never played those songs. So tonight it's a very special thing because of that. And going to your question, to maintain that, it's something that it has also a lot to do with respecting the material. Like, I think respect is a very important thing because you know your limitations at the time. You knew what you're trying to do. You're trying to emulate certain things, including German drummers like Ventor from Creator. I was trying to emulate some of his stuff with the rototoms and things like that. So it's magical to, more than 30 years later, to revisit this, as a different drummer. Of course, we all evolved as drumming. It's something that you never stop learning. That's a fact. Any drummer knows that every time you sit down on a kit, you're learning something. It's never boring, Every time, at least for me, every time I sit on the kit, so ideas come to my mind. I try new things, I try new beats, and that's an endless curve of learning. But then again, to play something like from the past, you need to respect and not try to recreate the whole thing. It's a good exercise as well, because it goes back to less is more, which is a very tough lesson for a drummer, especially a drummer starting,
Real Sepultura, Antichrist!
Okay, talking about old and thrashy metal and early death metal, So one of my assumptions of it. I remember times when I was intimidated 17-year-old fan in front of really badass folks on stage, be it Sinister, be it all those 90s bands. And I even hesitated to ask Corpse Grinder back then for an autograph because I was a little afraid. Maybe he's gonna punch me or whatever. Now you see him like with cuddly things on pictures and you know, okay, probably he wouldn't have punched me. That's the thing. Back then, these people were badass. And now it's a little bit more schooled, I would say. You see some new death metal bands and they are the sweetest guys, even on stage. And something is lost for me. How did you experience the old days, being part of the scene?
Well, I think part of this is the amount of information we get today. Like you're saying, today you get to see pictures of Corpse Grinder on his Instagram holding like a little puppy or something. Back then, you only have the album cover, maybe some pictures in a fanzine, maybe some videos, but the videos also, there was a lot of acting involved in the video. And then I think the mystery was there. It was because you didn't get to see that much. I think nowadays we see way more. That could be negative, that could be positive, you know. Depends on how you look at it. If you want to look for the real deal, I think it's better now. You can read people better. But the mystery, I think it was more back in the days when you only had the album cover with a maybe obscure picture in the back of the drummer or the guitar player, like a silhouette, and had all this crazy, mysterious thing about it. So that created, I think, that vibe, you know.
And how was it for you playing with those bands? Your first impression of those guys? When you were playing like with D-Side or meeting those guys and you know, oh, Glenn Benton, he has this cross in his forehead somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it was always cool because we're another band, you know, and so we got to kind of see that other side that people didn't see it, like see them backstage having a drink, having a coffee. So maybe for us, some of that mystery was already gone because you pull up to play a festival with, I don't know, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, D-Side. Before they go on stage, you see them and they're acting just like you. They're grabbing water, you know, they're looking for a place to take a shit, you know, and all that falls apart. And then, of course, when you see them on stage, it's another experience, you know, and it's totally cool. But I think some of that stuff, it's for us, by being in a band, it's very different, you know.
Yeah, sure. But I can imagine that the first time meeting like Mayhem guys and you'll be like, oh, it's those guys.
Yeah, for us it was cool because we already had trade letters with them back then. So we had a kind of a relationship, you know. So for us it was never that mystery. I think it's more in between bands and fans. Bands and other bands, I think they're quite regular with each other, I guess.
Come on! Antichrist! Antichrist! Antichrist!
Starting not a yet successful musician, you often have to compensate for the worst conditions on stage. Nowadays, we take all this technology for granted, triggers in your monitoring, all that stuff. What was your beginning like, as far as you remember?
I hated when I didn't have a good drum set. Of course, I just dealt with it and I was happy. But if I have to choose, I want to have the best drum sound ever. You know, I mean, not so much technology-wise, but the actual drums itself, you know, like for me as a drummer, it's such a pleasure to have a nice drum that you can just tune and hear a tone or something that you're like, yeah, this sounds good as it is, without any effects, without any, you know, processing on the studio. So as a drummer, of course, I prefer nowadays than back in the days, you know, especially when I had very, very shitty drums from Brazil. You know, very shitty cymbals and things that sounded really, really bad. Of course, the first time I played on a nice drum set, a really good Yamaha, a really good Sonor, I'll be like, oh my God, this is gold, you know? So yeah, but I prefer now.
So did it make you a different drummer?
I think yes. To be honest, necessity is a very important thing, especially as you starting as a drummer. I think it's good that you don't have the best drum as your first instrument. I think it's good to take steps to get to a certain level. So all those things are important for you to grow as a musician, as a drummer, and I wouldn't change now because I had to deal with so much different, scenarios, walking in and looking at the drums and being like, oh my God. Sometimes not even the drums, but you show up to a place and the drum heads are dead. They sound like cardboard and you're like, I guess this is it. You just have to play it, And what can you do? You can't. You're talking about like back in the days, underground shows with 20 bands playing. By the time you play the drums, they're destroyed. The drum heads are completely dented and you're like, I'm just gonna have to close my eyes and go for it, So it's cool.
Yeah, but maybe then you have to have 20 or 30% more energy to compensate for those heads that were
you'll be
gone.
heating them so hard to get any kind of a sound out of it that you'll be exhausted by the end of the show, But then again, it's a nice experience.
What's your goal with all you do? What is it that is most important to you that you would call success? Not necessarily in a monetary sense, but in your own individual self-fulfilling way. When are you the happiest with what you do?
I have to say success in my measurement, it's being able to do something that you love for a long time. Succeed to an extent that you are comfortable with what you do and you don't sacrifice your integrity as a musician, as a drummer, just for the sake of making money. So that's success for me. It's not having a golden Ferrari. It's not having whatever, limousines and all that stuff. It's doing something that you love and maintaining that for quite a few years. And that's what I try to show to my kids. It's like no matter what camp you're working, it could be anything from coding computers, but if you have that passion and if you enjoy what you do and for a long time, you're successful. It doesn't mean that you're rich. It doesn't mean that you're a millionaire, or it just means that you are successful within yourself, and that's the way I measure things.
So what project or band is the most natural for you? And what brings out a different voice out of you that maybe surprises yourself from time to time? So you have your brother thing going on, you have the Soulwax and Patrick and all the other projects.
I think the minute that I start doing more than one project, and that started way back when I was in the 90s with Nail Bomb or other stuff, I think it gives you a freedom that you don't need to do all your ideas into one thing. And that's quite liberating. So if you have a project that you can focus a little more, electronic drums, if you have other projects that you can focus a little more on the raw energy of punk, kind of punk rock playing. So all those things, by having different projects, for me, they really work in a way that I can have different versions of myself. And kind of like in my head, I can think of ideas for different projects. That's, I think, a very cool thing. I think every musician should have more than one project. I don't know, at least for me, I don't believe that one project it's a healthy thing.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
And what is it that is probably the most creatively challenging for you, where you have to be like a really different side of yourself?
The most challenging project that I do at the moment is definitely SoulX, because it's a very controlled environment with clicks and click tracks and counts, and everything they do is through MIDI. So all the lights, everything. So I can't really fluctuate the way I play, it's quite difficult, quite a very hard exercise for me, even eliminating like certain cymbal hits that I like to do in certain parts to accent. In that project, those are all gone. There's no cymbal hit there. And if I do, it's my mistake. It's not that I'm adding something nice to it. So it's quite challenging. But as a drummer, I think it's a very cool challenge to take, because I learned so much as well from all those things that I have to pace myself, to not do certain things, not being completely free. My freedom becomes in being creative in different ways, but I have to stick to certain plans. And that's the real challenge.
Some restrictions are, most of the time, they help you.
But they're frustrating.
Absolutely.
They're very frustrating.
It's
Let me
not fun.
tell you, sometimes I feel like I want to cry when I'm doing stuff like that, you know. But the final result, it's amazing. It makes you feel very good about it.
Igor!
There are different concepts of how bands work. Sometimes it's a group of equals, sometimes there's a mastermind and a hierarchy. But take Lemmy, for instance. Even though he was this iconic guy, he saw himself more as part of a band and not the leader. So what is your observations with different band concepts and egos? Just observations. Doesn't have to be your own project, just what you see.
I find quite interesting to have different ideas, different points of views of who dictates what in certain bands, in certain projects that I participate. For example, like when I did Absent and Body with the guys from Amen Ra, most of the stuff was already written. You can see that there's one mastermind behind it, which is Matthew, the guitar player. I find it really cool as well because, you know, it's not really that you're not collaborating as much, but your collaboration is very important to it. Because might not be creating everything from scratch. You might be adding to someone else's idea. And that's also interesting for me to be part of that concept. You know, the idea is already there, and let's see how much I can put my input to it and see my limits. You know, how much can I go for it? And that's, again, I think I find fascinating working with different people, how different it is. Some people let you do whatever you want, and some people like certain things, and all those things are, I think, for any drummer, it's very important to have, like we said again, limitations and sometimes complete freedom and sometimes improvisation. All those things are amazing exercises.
Yeah, I had some bands where it was really difficult because there was too much ego around. Being the drummer, I mean, you're in the backseat anyways, most of the time. There are a few drummers that are dictators, but come on, most of us not. And now I have a band that's not really the best music I've ever played. It's not like my thing, but it's everybody's moving in the same direction. And that's so healthy.
Yeah.
You can go so much further than with the other bullshit.
Yeah, but I think that also comes with age.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the older we get, the easier it is to eliminate big egos and dealing with people that really love the music and understand and respect each other's space. And that's an exercise that I've been doing for a long time. And I have to say nowadays, I only do projects where I can 100% say that I'm totally happy with the people that I'm working with. It's not about how much money I'm making. It's about how much this is good for me as a musician. And that's my first input. Is like, it's not like looking at the how much will I make on this tour. It's more like how much this is gonna be good for me as a career. Even with Paprick, it's such a small project. Sometimes if I'm not losing money, I'm already happy, and that's fine with me, if that's gonna increase my palette as a drummer to do certain things, I'm 100% in, It's not just financial.
Like you said, I mean, it's probably the healthiest answer. Otherwise, even though it's a job.
Yeah. Like I said, as long as I'm not losing my completely everything, then I don't know how much worth it is to continue to invest on something that doesn't work, But if it's something that it gives us the pleasure of playing together, and somehow it's growing, I'll keep doing it.
You mentioned improvisation. So I've learned much about improvisation the last years. And I realized that to completely let go, you have to be in total control. But that control has to be in autopilot, in a sense. So what have you learned about improvisation and jamming?
I think one of the most important things on improvisation is also giving space to each other. Because improvisation can mean also a big nightmare. If everyone, again, it's just throwing their ego in their instruments and trying to do everything, it just becomes a blob of sound. So learning how to fluctuate your space where you can get busier at certain times and you can be as simple as possible so other people are doing other things. I think that's, at least in my point of view, the best way to improvise is just by paying attention. It's almost like a conversation. You can't just talk, you need to listen as well. So as a drummer, I think we should do the same, We need to play, but also we should hear what's going on and adapt our drumming to that. And improvising, it's something that if you're not listening, is just a nightmare. You're just playing a drum solo forever and it's stupid.
Or the other guys are never reacting to what you are offering.
Yeah.
It's just your first idea, you throw it into the room.
And some of the times you're the one starting something with a beat or with a groove, and you dictating some kind of an idea. And then if no one's listening to that, it doesn't go anywhere. It's the worst.
What kind of a person would you say you are, and how does it show in your drumming?
It's funny because, again, energy is a very big important part of my drumming. And I remember my youngest son, the first time he came to see me play live, he was just a little kid. He told me that I looked like Donkey Kong when I was drumming, like a big gorilla. So I guess I'm that animal kind of thing on the drums, like very primal. And I express a lot of my emotions through drumming. And that includes also beating very hard and being super aggressive towards certain parts of the set. And that's kind of like, it works a bit of like a therapy for me, I do some of that for an hour and a half and I can go to bed very easy after that. So it's quite nice. But I think my personality as a drummer, I think it relies a lot on energy more than anything else. It's just a ball of energy trying to incorporate things, That's it. That's how I see it. I don't know how other people see it.
Yeah, but that's so odd because you are a very calm person. The vibe is very relaxed.
Yeah.
It's very comforting. So it's nice to be around you, but it's definitely not the same when you are on stage. Probably it's the same with me. I don't really know, but I know it can be pretty hectic sometimes.
Yeah.
This, and my drumming is a little bit like this. Oh, this idea, bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
I don't get that from your personality, so it's quite the opposite, I would say.
Yeah, it's a strange one because I am a super calm person most of the time. I kind of like preserve my energy for that. Because I can only imagine if I was that energetic all day, by the time I sit on the drum, I'll be exhausted already. So maybe that's a good balance that I preserve all this calmness before the storm, you know.
How does your fame reflect on yourself? Expectations that others might have of you, or what you think others might expect from you? Was that ever a problem, or not really?
No, there isn't a problem. I think for a pop star, maybe there is, you know, people that cannot do normal things. I think that could be very frustrating. I don't have that kind of a problem, you know. Of course, I can't just go now in the middle of the crowd and expect not everyone to ask me for autographs or selfies, all that stuff. But on my day by day, it's pretty mellow, you know, like people recognize me, of course. There's metalheads everywhere in the planet, and they do recognize me maybe also because of my tattoos or things that they can see and relate to it. But it's been most of the times I'm with my family having food, someone asks for something, it's fine. Because also I don't let that become a problem. Because if you give a bit of attention, also the person realizes that I'm not going to be there for an hour to talk to them. That attention, it's here. Hey man, thank you so much, but I'm here with my family. So it's fine. But I think if you make a big deal out of it, no, I'm not going to sign. No, it can become annoying again. So I don't let that fame become an issue. You know, I try to do normal things as much as I can, you know, even when I go to Brazil, which is a little more complicated because we are more recognizable there. When I live in London, I'm just another guy there. And then, of course, metalheads recognize me, but on the day by day, they see me groceries shopping with my kids or whatever, and it's all good. So the fame is not really a big problem. I think it's, you know, I enjoy the fact that I get usually people that come to talk to me, they're very respectful and they show how much they appreciate my drumming, how much they appreciate my music that I wrote, and that's cool, you know. But it's never like euphoria, like, It's not like the Beatles or anything like that. It's fine. Sometimes it can be like, sometimes I want to see certain bands, and I know if I don't have an access to maybe backstage or something, if I'm just going to be in the crowd all night, I'm not going to watch the show. I'm just going to be bombarded by other fans. So there is situations where you're like, oh man, I can't really go to that show unless I'll have a place on the side of the stage that I can go and actually watch the band and deal with the people afterwards, you know. So that can be an issue as well, you know.
Or directly into the mosh pit.
Yeah, but even in the mosh pit, they don't care. They'll stop you. They'll stop you. They'll be like, hey, with the camera, it's the mosh pit's not safe. It's not selfie free.
Put your hands up!
Okay. There are certain things your body just won't do, regardless of how much you fight against this inability. Do you have those kind of things where you be like, Jesus, my whole life I tried to hit this one cymbal, never, always miss, every day, or something like that?
No, I have to say I'm a very lucky person as far as like I don't have any major pains. I don't have any back problems, any knee problems, or even, like some muscle or arthritis, things like that. I do take care of myself. I do try to exercise regularly. So before I go on tour, and then, but I have to say, before this tour started, we did 8 weeks in America, and it's an hour and a half of really fast stuff. Very different than anything I play in years. The first 2 weeks of the American tour, my arms were really hurting. So I took an advice from a friend, and I took this pre-workout thing. It's a powder that people who work out, they take it, and helps with muscle fatigue. And that helped me out on those weeks. And then it stopped. Now I'm back on the groove that I can do it. But the first few weeks I was having quite a lot of muscle pain from playing that fast for such a long time, So it's quite a enduring set, this bestial morbid visions thing. It took a toll on me when I was like, shit. I remember finishing the show and my arms were like, oh my God, this is all stiff. And then a friend of mine who's a personal trainer, he was like, hey, try this pre-workout thing. It helps with people who run marathons and things so the muscles don't fatigue as fast. And it worked. Maybe that's an advice for other drummers,
Yeah, that sounds very good.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Igor here. It was a pleasure talking to you guys and going over some of my drumming for the second time for this channel. So I'm very glad you guys got to have this conversation with me. See you next time.